Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. Storm Flores has of course been making the news headlines in recent days, but it is now moving away. And I think that many people in the south could be wondering what all the fuss was about. Certainly down here, it was a non-event. A very different story though in the northern half of the UK, with a number of places recording close to record-breaking wind speeds for the time of the year. It brought significant disruption. So, can we expect further wet and windy periods as we head through the next 2 weeks? Let's see. Here's a view at 18 GMT on Tuesday the 5th. High pressure centred to the southwest and Atlantic flow moving across the United Kingdom. And it's the Atlantic which maintains the upper hand through the coming days, and there could well be further wet and windy periods in the northern half of the UK. But in the south, amounts of rain remain smaller and winds lighter. As we head towards the weekend, it stays changeable. You can see the tightly packed isobars in the northwest showing strong winds, but further south, a good deal of dry weather. Now, on this sequence, what happens is showery outbreaks of rain develop in southern and central areas. They become quite heavy on Saturday into Sunday. It stays more changeable in the north in general, but then early next week, it's high pressure which starts to build. And by the time this sequence finishes, Wednesday the 13th of August, it's settled and high pressure dominated across the UK. I mentioned those showery outbreaks of rain at the weekend in southern and central areas. Quite a lot of uncertainty about whether they will amount to anything or not. Some of the other computer model runs keep conditions dry and very warm in those areas, as I will show later. But keep up to date with the short range forecasts, I think, if you are planning a barbecue or outdoor activities. A lot of the differences between the computer model runs at the moment seem to be related to how they are handling the development and tracks of tropical storms in the North Atlantic as those start to move towards the United Kingdom, and there's a knock-on impact with the pressure blocks around the UK as a result. Here's the jet stream and upper air temperature sequence. The UK inside a red circle just here. The mottled shaded area shows the jet, and it's more or less making a beeline for us just at the moment, and that continues to be the case for quite a lot of the period actually, although it then becomes fragmented, and through the second half of the week it heads northwards and high pressure builds in, hence the more settled conditions developing. Let's see some of the day-to-day charts. Forecast temperatures on the left here for Wednesday the 6th of August and rain on the right. One thing to note here is that in the subsequent charts, which I'll show, there isn't a great deal of change for temperatures. 20s, low to mid 20s really in southern and central areas, cooler as you go northwest, although quite warm there in eastern Scotland. And most of the rain, as can be seen on this chart, is shown in the northwest, although it does push further southwards on Thursday, but it's fragmenting as it does so. As I've already mentioned, temperatures not a great deal different, the same general profile, warmer in the south, cooler in the north. On to Friday, temperatures have ticked up a little bit by now, but still very similar actually, and there is some rain in the northwest and lower temperatures there as well. By Saturday, maybe a degree or two higher, 26 or 27 in the south. Cooler still in the northwest, 20, 21 there, Northern Ireland and eastern Scotland, but western and northern Scotland having the lowest values because that's where the cloud and rain is most likely to be. Then Sunday and Monday, and this is using data from the GFS model, and by this range there are quite a lot of differences between the different computer models, as I'll show in a moment. But just sticking with these charts for now. Low to mid 20s in England and Wales, cooler in the north, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Also some showery rain there in those areas on Sunday, although on Monday it looks mostly dry according to this, at least in the afternoon. Windy conditions, as I've mentioned, mostly in the north, particularly the northwest. A couple of charts here from the UKV model to illustrate. One on the left, 00 GMT on Thursday the 7th of August. On the right, it's midday on Friday. Gusts of around 50 to 60 miles an hour in northern and western Scotland, windy in Scotland and the northern half of the UK more generally, but not desperately so. It doesn't look like there's going to be the same level of disruption which we've just seen with Flores. And in the south, it's breezy there on Friday, 20 mile an hour gusts, but definitely nothing to worry about. I've mentioned temperatures, and this is a good illustration of some of the differences between the computer models. Forecast maximums on Sunday on the left here, the GFS, which I've been using in the animation, so mid-20s, maybe 26 in the south. But on the right here, we've got the ECM artificial intelligence model. That's showing maximums of around 28, 29, maybe even 30 degrees at the same time. If I bring up the UK Met Global and the Canadian model, once more, these are showing significantly higher values than the GFS at the same time, 29 according to the UK Met there in central and eastern parts of England, 31 degrees in the southeastern corner according to the Canadian model. And if you just look across the channel on that chart, you can see some very high values in northern France into the mid-30s. So very warm air close by, lots of differences between the GFS and the other models in terms of the temperature profile by Sunday. Now here's the MOGREPS-G temperature forecast. So MOGREPS-G is an ensemble model run by the UK Met Office, with each line on this graph representing a forecast from one of the runs within it for temperatures in the London area through the coming days. So the horizontal axis shows time. Good agreement early on, but then by the 8th there's quite a big spread developing. You can see the lines becoming further apart from each other, and each one of those, as I've said, is showing a different forecast. So when they start to widen out, it means it's an increasing range of possible outcomes. You can see there by the 10th, the 11th of August, one or two runs going up towards 30 degrees, a number keeping it cooler but still warmer than it has been recently. And MOGREPS-G temperature forecasts often, in my view, undershoot the actual values by a degree or two, because these are mean forecast temperatures rather than maximums or minimums. Wind speed gusts for London, well, not troublesome, as I said, in the south through the first week, up to about 30 miles an hour perhaps, but it's in the north where a closer eye has to be kept on wind speeds. This chart is for Inverness. You can see gusts of around 50 miles an hour at times, and as I showed with the UKV charts a little bit earlier, it's more the strongest winds are more likely to be in western Scotland, the Western Isles, and the far north than somewhere like Inverness. So we could be seeing, as I mentioned earlier, gusts of around 60 to 70 miles an hour, perhaps more likely 60 in western coastal counties of Scotland, northern coastal counties of Scotland perhaps as well. Rainfall in more general terms. Here are the aggregates for days 0 to 5 from the ECM and GFS models. Wettest in the northwest, you can see western Scotland there up to about 75 millimetres according to the ECM on the left. The GFS also has an area of rain in southwestern England, some Wales and central England, which I showed earlier and discussed. You can see here the ECM isn't replicating it. The ECM's keeping dry conditions in that area. It's not developing that showery activity like the GFS, hence why there's low confidence in it happening, and why, if you are living there and you're planning outdoor activities, you should keep an eye on the short range forecasts as the time approaches. Moving onto the 10-day charts, the totals have continued stacking up in western Scotland, particularly on the ECM chart on the left. You can see the orange shading, over 140 millimetres of rain in the 10-day period locally. In other parts of the UK, the amounts haven't changed a great deal, which would suggest through the day 5 to 10 part of the forecast period, a lot of dry weather is being indicated by both of these models. So in more general terms, what the deterministic models look like as we head towards the end of the first week. As I've already indicated, forecast confidence is quite low because they are showing different things, but let's just have a closer look. This is Tuesday the 12th of August according to the GFS model. We've got high pressure building up across the UK. The Canadian model has high pressure building here, but we've got the potential at least for more showery conditions of south and east, maybe developing. The German icon has the high pressure building up from the south, low pressure areas to the northeast, from northwest. The European ECM has the Azores high pressure building northeastwards. A fairly settled picture if this one's correct. The artificial intelligence version doesn't look quite so definite in its outcome. Perhaps some showery rain would be developing there in central and southeastern parts. And finally, the UK Met Office Global, the high pressure there building northwards and in the Atlantic and across the northern parts of the UK, but indications there of showery rain in southern and central areas. Quite a bit of uncertainty, I think, about just how things will be shaping up towards the end of the first week. The broad scale developments may look similar, but the details on the ground could be notably different, especially in the southern half of the UK, whereas if the GFS is correct, it's basically dry everywhere. But if the UK Met Global, for instance, is correct, one or two of the others, then there would be a chance of some showery rain in southern and central areas. Now also, will it be turning cooler by then? Well, first of all, it's not definite that it is going to be turning very warm or hot through this period. I showed a number of models which were going up to 28, 29, 30, 31 degrees, but it's not definite at this stage. It certainly looks quite likely. And if those warmer or hotter conditions do develop, will they last until the end of the first week? Well, that's also up in the air, with the differences being shown here according to various deterministic models. So with things uncertain towards the end of the first week, how does week 2 develop? As ever, it's just about the trends and the probabilities at this range using the Ensemble data. The 16-day GEFS plot for London. Upper air temperatures across the top. The thick purple line, the Ensemble mean, is staying above the thick black line, the 30-year norm, throughout the period. But there is a big spread there between the individual runs within the Ensemble. A number are continuing to bring very, very warm air aloft over this part of the UK. But that has been the case in many recent updates during recent weeks, and it hasn't transpired. Nonetheless, the signal, I think, is quite strong for upper air temperatures to be warmer than the average, maybe not exceptionally so like those outlying runs would indicate. Often dry as well, for not many rain spikes along the bottom, but there are some, therefore probably not completely dry, even in the southeast. And the European Ensemble paints a similar picture to the GEFS. More lines on this graph, hence it looks more cluttered, but the thick purple line, I think you can just about make out, stays above the thick black line throughout the second week. It does dip a little bit here, and there are a number of cooler runs which show up, but all in all, the signal for above average 850 HPA temperatures is strong. In terms of rainfall, well, if you look very closely, each of these numbers shows the percentage chance of it raining or staying dry at each time step, and it's around about 80%. So maybe a little bit of a sign here that it won't be quite as dry as the GEFS was suggesting, but still lots of dry weather to be found. 2 meter temperatures from the GEFS, possibly something of a downwards trend here. After the first few days where maybe they're peaking, you can see a significant amount of a pink shade, which indicates runs going for over 30 degrees, it then dips through the subsequent days. But temperatures probably above the average. Very warm conditions are likely at times. A chance that it will be hot. Overnight lows on the bottom part of the data table plot, and mostly the orange shading of it, that's decreasing later. Those are 16s to 20s. The amount of yellow, the 11s to 15s, is starting to increase. So perhaps, if there's a trend shown here, it's for the warmest or hottest conditions to be early in the second week, and then something of a dip later on, but not a strong trend. Up to Manchester, a similar story to London. Above average 850 HPA temperatures. The anomaly smaller, though, I think, than on the London chart. Dry periods, a few spikes continuing to show up, so not completely dry here either. The 2 meter temperature data tables for Manchester, that shallow, I would describe it, downwards trend showing through the days. For nights, not much happening there. 11 to 15 continuing to dominate through the second week. So quite warm through the days, maybe dipping a little bit, but not as warm as in London as is normal. Glasgow, slightly above average 850 HPA temperatures. Now the anomaly has further reduced, so it was biggest in London, smaller in Manchester, and smaller still in Glasgow. But the signal is for most of the runs there to be at least a little bit above that 30-year average. a greater chance of rain throughout the second week from more spikes showing up there. The 2-metre temperature data tables for Glasgow, and not a strong direction of travel here either. Most of the columns are made up with the orangey red and the orangey colours, so 16s to 20s have been favoured, 21 to 25 showing up in quite a few runs, also some cooler ones there. All in all, probably not that far from the average here. The overnight lows, well, 6 to 10 remains dominant, and of course the nights are increasingly lengthy at this time of year, not short, as I was saying last week, incorrectly of course. Rainfall through the second week. The ECM probability charts show the percentage chance of 5 or more millimetres of rain falling on the first 3 days of week 2. Significant in Western Scotland, the green shading around 50%. The percentage chance though falls substantially as you head southwards, and eastwards only about 10% in much of the UK on any one day. Moving forwards to the next 3 days, and the broad profile remains more or less identical. A good chance of significant amounts of rain in Western Scotland, maybe the west more generally, but a lot drier still, or a greater chance of it staying drier as you head southwards and eastwards. It would indicate that high pressure will probably be having a good deal of influence, but what does the mean surface level pressure data table for York point towards? Yellows dominate the columns as we go through the second week. Those runs going for between 1,011 to 1,025 millibars. There's comparable amounts of orange, strongly high dominated runs, and green, low pressure dominated ones. So it doesn't look like there is a very strong signal here for high pressure to be dominated, not by any means if this is taken at face value, but pressure would be a little bit higher as you head south of York because it's building up from the Azores, and lower if you go up to Glasgow, which fits in with the general scheme of things. But it does lend some credence to the idea that there could well be rain at times even in the south, but amounts of rain would probably remain small, and that also fits in with what the ECM Ensemble probability charts, which I just looked at a moment ago, were pointing towards. Here's the GEFS mean surface level pressure snapshot chart for Friday the 15th of August. High pressure from the Azores and warm air across southern and central parts of England. You can see the 10-degree line there at about 1,500 metres above our heads, cooler as you head northwards. And the European chart, perhaps a high pressure centred a bit further, southwest lower pressure over the UK, a bit more mixed, but still some very warm air there moving northwards, perhaps leading to some showery or even thundery activity were it to be close to mark. But as ever with these mean surface level pressure snapshot charts, it's very, very important to remember that they are just generated by averaging out all of the individual runs in the ensemble, so they can be masking a wide range of solutions. So quite a messy picture, I think, but to summarise, week 1 changeable with rain mainly in the north, where there will also be some windy periods. But with that said, I don't think the strong winds are going to be comparable to ones which Flores has brought in recent days. Often dry in the south, there will be some rain around, but the amounts probably stay small. Temperatures climb, and there is a significant chance of it becoming very warm or even hot, maybe into the high 20s or even low 30s is not out of the question. But not all the computer models support that idea, as I've discussed. Week 2, some rain is likely, but it will often be dry in southern and central regions. Temperatures above the average, potentially very warm periods in the south. The greatest chance may be through the first half of the second week, because there was that gentle dip in temperatures showing up in some of the ensemble data towards the end of the forecast period. So there we have it. All in all, I think quite a mixed bag. There is the suggestion of it turning drier and warmer, possibly very warm or even hot, as I've said. I'm not 100% sold on the idea, because the ensemble data in recent days and weeks has often trended towards that type of evolution, and then it hasn't really happened. So let's wait and see, but it could be that summer is going to make another appearance as we go through the next couple of weeks, particularly in the southern half of the UK, with the north maybe hanging on to more changeable and cooler weather. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this forecast and found it useful. Then as if you did, please consider hitting the like button below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. And that way you'll be helping the development of the Weather Outlook on YouTube, as well as ensuring that you don't miss any of my future updates. Finally, stay up to date with the day-to-day developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks so much now. Bye.